Welcome to this week's St. Clair County Board of Commissioners meeting. The types of business that occur at these meetings include public hearings, official voting on actions by the Board of Commissioners, presentations by departments of the county, and recognition of service that makes our county great. As your elected representatives, the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners is committed to improving the lives of all our residents while preparing county government to meet the demands of the future. In order to do that, we need to share our thoughts and plans with you. More importantly, we need you to share your thoughts, concerns, and opinions with us. We encourage you to come and experience the process by attending any of these meetings. They occur every first and third Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. at the St. Clair County Administration Building at 200 Grand River Avenue in Port Huron.
Call the St. Clair County Human Services Committee to order and requesting roll call, please.
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Tomian?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bohm?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Graytop?
Here.
Commissioner Riley?
Here. We stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any additions or deletions or changes to the agenda?
I'll move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Citizens to be heard, excuse me, I have one tonight to be heard, Doug Port. And Doug's already informed me that he's going to speak on roads at County Park and traffic deaths, and he already told me he had 3 minutes, so I think he's ready.
He's ahead of you, huh?
He's ahead of me.
I would like to commend the board and a few others for the actions on that road problem out at the park. It was a little unusual in that it was a combined responsibility, and I know this has probably been around for quite a while, but I and others brought it to the Road Commission's attention early in September. And here it is early in December, and yeah, the road isn't paved, but that's a foregone conclusion. So the Road Commission and Kirk Weston particularly deserve kudos. Dave Rushing picked it up from there, and of course Wales Township and the Parks Commission. Everybody cooperated, and I think that's a lesson on getting things done. A little tongue-in-cheek here. Maybe you folks could make some money by putting seminars in for our state and federal government to solve problems like this. But anyway, congratulations on that. That leads to the next subject, traffic deaths. Every death is a tragedy. And we have one person killed in Afghanistan. That's reported nationally, and rightfully so. If we have a school shooting with 2 or 3 people killed, that deserves national attention and a whole lot of focus to find out what went wrong. And yet traffic deaths occur not daily. I think a year ago there were 23 people in St. Clair County alone, and at the end of the year it's just 23 people. And I know that there's been significant improvement in road design and enforcement and driver training and so on and so forth. But I'm wondering if there could be a little different approach tried, and maybe here in the county. I don't know if it's been tried anyplace else in the state or the country, but to get together various agencies, maybe not after every death, but maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, maybe once a month, and just look at all of the possibilities to break that chain that caused that death, whether it was somebody falling asleep or a vehicle problem or maybe something in the roads. And I know this is looked at kind of individually, but I'm wondering if there could be some increased focus and we could get some increased results, some better results. How close am I to 3 minutes?
22 seconds.
Okay, for instance, the person that drinks and drives, there's a whole chain of events if that person ends up killing some person. You know, why did he stop at the bar in the first place, he or she? Why did they have more than one drink? At the end of the evening, could the barkeep have said, you can't drive? Could he have got another driver? Could the car have an interlock? Maybe the person took the back roads, as some people do. And if any one of those links in the chain would have been broken, it might have prevented that. So an all-inclusive approach like that may yield some results. Just a suggestion.
Thank you for your comments.
Good, thanks very much, Doug, for your comments, and thanks for really bringing that to a head on those roads out there. I was at the road commission the night you spoke, and you very well laid that out for everybody. That was good.
Just kind of identified focused on the problem.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Any other citizens to be heard? Updates? If none, conceptual initiatives? Old business? Going into new business. Item A, Resolution 1341, 2014 Senior Citizens Millage Allocation Plan.
Make a motion that this goes to the full board.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion?
Dave Hill's here if he's going to.
Excuse me.
Only if you need any answers, questions.
Anybody have any questions for?
Nope, it's good.
You want to give us the brief
No.
spiel? Or?
Yeah, anything you'd like to?
You showed up, so it's a little spiel.
Mr. Chair, I wonder, David, if you could comment about what you see as any changes to the budgeting to the various community groups that do receive that millage, and if there's been some changes, down, up, needs, that sort of thing.
Okay. The 2014 recommendation from the Commission on Aging is for a 4% increase across the board for the programs. Issues that we still have in the back of our mind as the Commission on Aging, certainly sequestration. We took a bit of a hit, the Council on Aging took a bit of a hit for the home delivered meals program at the tail end of 2013, these last 3 months. The cut was $36,000 on that. We were able to fill that gap with the millage funds. It looks very much like, at least for the first half of this next fiscal year, there will be some further sequestration issues that we'll have to deal with, primarily with the Council on Aging and the nutrition program, and maybe with their homemaker and chore service programs. The Commission on Aging, when it made this budget for 2014, has in the back of their heads the likelihood that there will be some requests mid-year to deal with sequestration or broken vehicles. We dealt with a couple broken vehicles this last year for the Council on Aging's nutrition delivery vans, and we're able to replace those. By setting the 2014 budget the way they did, the Commission did, they have adequate funds in the fund balance to deal with necessary emergencies, or maybe not really emergencies, but new problems that might evolve during the course of the year. They're also prepared to deal with the fact or the likelihood that the revenues for 2014 and 2015 are not really going to grow with any significance. So they set aside some money to deal with that. Those are the kind of issues that the Commission on Aging is dealing with as it works, as it set the 2014 allocations, and as it is making some anticipations for 2015.
Now-
Because, the final thing, allow me to do that, the Commission on Aging will be coming back to you later in 2014, or well, actually earlier, probably April or May, and asking you to consider putting a renewal of the millage on the budget. Both the original .5 and the new .3 come due in the August primary. So the Commission on Aging is going to be asking you to consider renewing those, both those together. So we'll continue to have .8 mils. That's what we've had for 2013. That's what we have to 2014, is .8. So that is going to be another one of those immediate future issues. Probably April or May will be coming to your subcommittees, and asking for consideration of those renewals. At the same time, we'll be asking corporate counsel through the administrator's office to draft some language that we all can work with to renew.
Commissioner Greta?
Dave, are you going to ask for two separate millages, or are you going to combine them into one?
We're hopeful the corporate counsel will be able to work the language to put them both together as one single question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Dave? Yes.
Just
Commissioner
a
Hyden?
quick question. Any anticipation of the extent of the federal cuts because of sequestering next year?
Well, like we did mention, we did face a $36,000 cut at the tail end of 2013, and where the Council on Aging, as they keep their ear to the ground through the Area Agency on Aging, it doesn't look like that $36,000 will be restored, and it also looks like, quite likely, unless a deal is made in the next 2 weeks at Congress, it looks like we'll face another $36,000 to $40,000 cut in congregate meals, primarily.
Nutrition program for the elderly.
Nutrition program, yes.
Eric, you have a...
Just for the heck of it, not to jinx anybody, but I read an article like literally 10 minutes before I walked out the door to come here, and they said that they think Representative Ryan and Senator Murray, so she's the Democrat side and he's the Republican side, may have a deal for a 2-year budget that'll end sequestration. So they'll put a cap on spending, they'll cap the departments, but instead of tagging certain programs, the departments will have to deal with their limit on their spending. So, and they said that they'll be, she flew back, I think she's from Washington State, and I think that she flew back and she wasn't coming back if they weren't going to be able to get the thing done. So it's like going to happen like right now or not at all. So it's a little bit of hope, maybe actually get a budget after like 8 years without one or something.
Maybe they were listening to our earlier speaker.
Exactly.
Any other questions for Dave? Okay, thanks very much, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We got a motion second.
Yeah, we got a motion
Yep.
and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item B, CMH Health Coordinator Agreement.
Thank you, gentlemen. This is one of the agreements we're asking you to approve tonight. I did speak, I believe, to most of you about 6 months ago about the importance of us extending our services and collaborating with other agencies. And this is one of the fruits of that labor. It's a small but very important contract as far as we're concerned, providing care management services to CMH to try and improve the health of their clients and connect them with primary care more effectively. You have any questions?
Yes.
I believe you have the budget.
Any questions?
Make a motion, we send it to the full board.
I would like, I talked to Doc, she'd like to do it for final action tonight. If anybody's got an issue with that, doesn't, if that's somebody you want to get.
And that's because this is a very time-sensitive grant. We're already delayed about 6 weeks, and we want to provide them the full amount of their grant capability with our services.
If the maker of the motion agrees to making it for final action, I will second it.
All right, then I will make a motion that the Community Mental Health Coordinator Agreement be approved for final action.
It's supported. Howard, Commissioner Spasco, you have a question?
This is on the health coordinator, medical practitioner contracts, that what the discussion is?
Yes, the service agreement.
Is that the one that was at our place?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, Dave Rushing asked me a question on the last provision of the, above the signature lines on the second page of the actual agreement. And I think his point was well taken. It says, this action to terminate the agreement will require a meeting of the parties and a plan to terminate will be developed. I would think there could be some better language. This action to terminate the agreement will require 30-day notice to the other party so as to facilitate termination of the position in an orderly fashion. I mean, something like that seems to make more sense. Otherwise, there's really no end date, and I didn't like the language either, so that's my 2 cents.
I'm sorry.
And I do believe that the language was kept vague because this is particularly important for both agencies to complete this project. They've already received this grant funding and need to utilize it. We've already committed our staffing and using this funding to supplement what we kind of walked away from. So our goal would not be to terminate this contract. We would like to negotiate further work.
Right, but the way it's worded to me, if you don't have an agreement, you can't terminate it. Where if you give notice to the other
This
party.
grant is limited with 1 year regardless.
What's that?
It is a limited grant funding for 1 year, 1 fiscal year, regardless.
Saying
It'll
You've
just
got
end.
language in there allows for early termination by agreement. I just thought there'd be better language, that's all. I don't disagree with what you're
I
saying.
see.
I just didn't like the language. Dave brought it up. I think he's right. I didn't like the language, so it's my 2 cents.
We can make a addition to that motion first. We'll vote on that first.
If you think it's necessary, appropriate.
think
I don't
it's
know, Gary,
necessary,
What's your
this,
thoughts, Gary? Do you think that's,
This agreement has not yet been signed by Ms. Johnson or myself, so it would be possible to adjust it. It would just take more time.
just the second page above the signature lines? Back of the first page.
And here's the way I read this. It says, any action to terminate the agreement will require a meeting of the parties to plan it to terminate will be developed. So what I read that as saying is essentially, if you give notice, then you have to agree on a plan to wind it down. So I don't view it as requiring an agreement to terminate. It's just a winding down process.
So you're okay with that language?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Next, again.
Okay, next is CMH Prescription Drug Abuse Agreement.
As you may have heard me discuss in various venues, prescription drug abuse continues to be a very significant problem for this county. It's a problem for all counties, but I think we have a more than unusual problem here. We've been working very hard as a work group and as a collaborative agency to develop a process and education for not only our community workers, but also for our healthcare system and our medical providers. And this agreement allows the CMH Coordinating Authority, the Substance Abuse Coordinating Authority, to actually pay us for some support services, and as well as to reimburse some of the time and effort my staff have been providing up till now with no reimbursement.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would move that this agreement be forwarded to the full board.
Second?
Moved and supported. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next would be item D, Community Grant Assistance Program, letter of support, CGAP.
Gentlemen, this is an issue of looking at the feasibility of greater collaborative work with our health department in Santa Ana County. I have here Diane Schaefer. She is the health officer in Santa Ana County. Last week, November 26th, we were at her Board of Commissioners, and they likewise approved a letter of support. This is a grant that's being applied through Strategic Federal Affairs, and they've been very collaborative. We've received a lot of state support, and I want to just emphasize that it's not a grant to merge or to merge services, but to study the feasibility. As you may be aware, some mergers in the Thumb area did occur. It didn't end well, and we would like to avoid any future complications even considering this. I also want to remind you that there's a great deal of emphasis at the state for these regions of prosperity. We're getting a lot of pressure to start looking at this, and we believe that this is the best way of approaching it from our best perspectives, so that we consider our own benefits ahead of being told what to do. So Diane, do you want to say hello?
Well, good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak a little bit with you tonight. I do want to tell you how important I think this opportunity is for us, us meaning the Santa Ana County Health Department and of course the St. Clair County Health Department, and certainly it extends to the boards of commissioners for our respective jurisdictions also. You know, there's a great opportunity for us to look at this grant, this feasibility study, to explore the opportunity to gain administrative efficiencies. There's an opportunity for us to explore, you know, sharing some of our services too, and learning more about each other's best practices, and learning more about how we do business in each of our respective counties, and that just creates better things for the people that we serve. And what we want to ultimately get to the point to do is to, you know, improve and increase the health services that may be available to folks in our communities, and also, you know, get a jump start on the possible opportunity to either go into formal, maybe a formal, not a merger, but, you know, more formal arrangements for our service delivery. So like Dr. Mercantile said, you know, we're not going to jump into a, you know, into a marriage or anything, but maybe we'll just have a courtship for a little while, and that might work out well. So I think it's a great opportunity. I thank you for considering this, and also for inviting us to the table, because this is going to be, I think, a good thing for us to do and work on. So thank you very much. I won't take any more of the next time. So,
Mr. Chair, I would move that the agreement, the Community Grant Assistance Program Letter of Support, be signed by our chair and sent on.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any more discussion?
I got a question. Mr. Kaufman, you're happy with this?
Yes, in fact, we've met a number of times to talk about this, myself, Dr. Mercantant, and some of her staff. I did meet with Ms. Schaefer as well as the Santa Ana County Administrator, and we talked about this as well a couple of weeks ago. I think it's a great opportunity just to see, if nothing else, what are the strengths and the weaknesses of Santa Ana County and of St. Clair County, and what might we be able to do so we're both stronger agencies. So I think it's a great project.
Yes. Tommy.
Mr. Chair, a few meetings ago, our health department came and presented a long-term plan for the health department. It was very ambitious, and I think some of the comments that we made at that time were, we'd like to see the health department kick off some of these partnerships as soon as possible. And I think it's very interesting tonight to see that we actually have 3 items that involve partnerships with the health department and other organizations. So I commend the health department for moving ahead.
Very good, thank you. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. Next would be item, excuse me, E, Agreement for Extension Services, Michigan State University.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
If you give me just a second to explain the fuzzy math, because it's a little different from last year, I'd be happy to be brief. If on page 2 you turn to the assessment itself, you notice that the top figure of 86,322, that would be a figure that would represent the assessment if we were over the last 2 years, and including going into 2014, would have asked for an increase. However, we're supported by the state of Michigan to the tune of about 4% last year, and so we have, we're not going to put that increase into effect, and so we've subtracted that amount from that figure of 87.2. The 79,912 is the figure that it was last year, same figure that it was the year before, and then you also receive a credit because our 4-H program coordinator is actually a county employee, and the assessment charge is in part for the program coordination for the 4-H program, and because she's a county employee, we deduct that amount. I would tell you then that the total figure on the bottom represents the general fund appropriation that has been approved, and it's one of the line items in our budget. Any questions at all?
Any discussion?
I'll make a motion we forward this to the full board.
Support?
Moved and supported. All in,
Just one question.
yes,
We
Commissioner.
did indeed budget for this amount from the extension.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, thank you. Next would be Commission on Aging reappointments.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve Sheriff Tim Donellan, Mr. Joseph Kriesel, for sure. We have one no reply. What do you want to do with that one?
I would, I would think we leave it on there for now, and
All right, then I'll make the motion for Mr. Joe Kriesel and Mr. Tim Donellan for reappointment to the Council on Aging, or the Commission on Aging.
you have a support.
Support.
Moved and supported, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next, Veterans Affairs Board reappointment.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that Mr. Frank Bacon be reappointed to the Veterans Affairs Board for a term ending December 31st, 2017.
Support.
Moved and supported, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is Health Advisory Board reappointments.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that Mr. John Jones and Mrs. Marie Muller be reappointed to the Health Advisory Board.
Support.
Moved and supported, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, other human service matters, I'd like to just mention 2 things while I'm on that. One, the other night, I attended a road commission meeting, and they had a John H. Johnstone was given a proclamation that evening, and I just happened to be there for that meeting, and he retired 12/1/13. He started working with the road commission April 11th, 1983. But I have to say, when listening to the road commissioners that evening, John was an excellent employee, but he had a lot of special things that they recognized him for. And I just wanted to mention his name tonight because I thought it was really important because he was such a great employee. And I listened to all the stories that they told about him and the way he was in the building, and I thought it just kind of, it's nice to have employees that are recognized, that are that well thought of in the county. The other thing was November 25th, Judge Brown spoke on foster parenting and adoptions for the Human Services Department, and I attended that, and he did an absolutely awesome job speaking that night, and it was just well received by the people that were there. The adoption program and the foster parenting is really something that a lot of people don't think about, but the people that they were there had a lot of interest in it, a lot of good questions, and Judge Brown just did a great job that evening, and I just wanted to mention that.
Mr. Chair, you mentioned Judge Brown and the juveniles and what we try to do in the county for him, and I think Mr. Graytop, there was a report from the Intervention Academy.
Yeah, it's on my agenda for tonight.
Okay.
I'll bring that up.
But great record.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, information only. Item A, area aging on 1B quarterly update, July 13th through September 13th.
Make a motion to receive and file the information only.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move we adjourn.
I'd like to receive and file packets first. And then we're going to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Okay, moved and supported.
I'd like to call the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Judiciary Public Safety Committee meeting to order. May I have the roll, please?
Commissioner Samasco.
Here.
Commissioner Tamian.
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann.
Here.
Commissioner Bohm.
Here.
Commissioner Rushing.
Here.
Commissioner Riley.
Here.
Commissioner Graytop.
Here. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, I need a motion.
I would move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any updates? Or, I'm sorry, citizens to be heard. Any citizens wishing to address judiciary and public safety? All right, moving on to updates. Anybody? Conceptual initiatives? None. There's no old business. Under new business, item A, the 2014 Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Grant Agreement. You have it in front of you, gentlemen. Looks like there's some match in there, but it's not going to cost us. It's coming from some other locations.
We'll make the motion.
Support.
Motion support to send it on to the full board. Any discussion or questions? We have somebody here if you have questions. Hearing none, all in favor of sending it on to the full board?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming. 7B is a letter of agreement from Community Mental Health Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Services for inmates.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved.
Support.
Supported
Second.
to send it to the full board. Are there any questions about this particular piece? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll send that on to the full board. Excuse me. 7C, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Board reappointments.
See, we have three. I'll move that we have Ms. Kathy Brophy, Mr. Bob Carson, and Mr. Benjamin Clotines be reappointed.
Support.
There's one more. There's one more.
Deb Johnson.
Sorry. Deb Johnson included.
Okay, so I have four then. And did I have a second?
Yes.
I have a second from Commissioner Riley. Discussion, gentlemen, on these reappointments. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under other judiciary and public safety matters, I just want to take a minute, and you have it in your packet. There's a insight sheet that looks like this, two sides. And I just want to bring it to your attention. This is from the St. Clair County Intervention Academy. Commissioner Heidemann used to sit on it. He retired, and I now sit on that board. And we're kind of the ones that oversee the jail school, if you want to call it that. It's an intervention academy, but it's a charter school inside the facility there. And I just want to bring your attention to some of the numbers. If you guys would look at the average incoming scores on the left-hand side in that green section, and then you'll see the average existing scores, you will see that for those students who come in and leave, the reading scores improved by more than 1 full grade. The math scores went up by just over 2 grades for the time that they spent in there. You will also see that the number of high school diplomas issued is 15. Now that's not a GED, that's a regular high school diploma issued. The number is 15. And then a little further down, you'll see the GEDs that are earned inside there. 408 adults and 88 juveniles, and all of this, gentlemen, since 2009. So they are doing a very good job of taking these kids when they're off the streets, in the jail, in the school, educating them, which we have to do, then putting them back out in a better position than when they came in.
Just, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I would just like to comment that the typical incarceree in either the juvie center or the adult side, because we provide programs on both sides, is typically less than a year. So when we're looking at this academic progress that these young people made, we have to recognize that in many cases that was accomplished within, let's say, a 6 to 8 month span of time.
I think it has to do with the focus.
Oh, yeah.
They're focused.
They're focused.
If I'm not mistaken, sometimes you can get out early if you get your GED. I'm not sure, but I think that might be the case sometimes.
Sounds like quite an incentive.
It is. It is. All right, thank you for that. Are there any other commissioners that have anything for judiciary and public safety that you would like to address?
I do have one comment in response to what you've just said, and that is that when we incarcerate people in the jail, we have to recognize within that very short period of time, less than a year, they're going to come back into the community. So the issue is, how do we want them to come back? And if we put a carrot out there like, you can get out early if you complete your GED, we know that they're going to come back into the community, at least with some educational credentials to help them get their life turned around.
Commissioner Samasco.
There's actually a residential orientation handbook they hand out that details the system of rewards and punishments within the system, and it's keyed into many things like behavior, grades, attitude. Many things go into that, and you achieve different levels of benefit by behaving yourself, by achieving things. I think it's a very good system. I think it works very well.
Excellent. Thank you. That was information only. Receive and file.
So moved.
I have a motion. Support. And support to receive and file packets. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I need an
Motion to adjourn.
I'll support.
motion support to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
I'd like to call the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Environmental and Public Works Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll?
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Tamian?
Here.
Commissioner Bone?
Here.
Commissioner Riley?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Greatop?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here. Do we have any addition, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
And supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Citizens to be heard regarding environmental matters. Commissioner Ward,
Former. 3 minutes.
Start the clock.
Thank
Thank you, gentlemen. Just real quick,
I understand it came before the board last month in regards to using park funds to help repair a road out by the county park, and I'm just here to say that I feel that that was an inappropriate use of those funds. I recognize that legally it's the language allowed for it, but I just think it's a slippery slope. I mean, where are we going to go? Are we going to pave Garfield Street to get to the lighthouse? Will that be our next step? I just don't think that's the right process. The good old fairground, paving the road out in front of it, I just don't think that was the right way to use parks money, and I thank you for your time.
Commissioner Ward, I think you have to fill out some information.
Sure. You have to do paperwork.
Okay, updates from the airport. Kathy?
Commissioners, as your airport director, I'm delighted to stand here tonight in front of you with positive events happening at the airport instead of always asking you for something. As you know, the FBO, the new FBO at Aviation Express, has been operating at the airport for the last 4 months. They're becoming a great asset to the airport. We're receiving a lot of positive feedback from everyone, and I hope it's kind of trickling back to you as well. I've provided with you tonight a spreadsheet, basically just go over the income and expenses of Aviation Express, just so that we're on the same page. If you'd allow me to go over it just kind of gently, I'd like to. The fuel income from August through November of 2014 is the top line. You'll see the fuel revenue for each month in the total of $222,000. The other income that obviously we never ever received before was landing fees, the handling fees, and then the hangar fee, the transient fees that we're receiving are $4,900. The new generated hangar income, which is the big blue hangar that you had purchased the lease back for, is $14,000. So if you look over on the right-hand side, kind of totaled it that way to $242,000. The fuel inventory is the inventory that we have on staff or on site right now. That this is what we actually paid for the fuel itself. So obviously it'll be more than that once we resell it. I'm not sure if that was the appropriate way to put it in there, but I had to add that to it because it obviously is part of it. So we're at $294,000. The fuel expense itself and the Aviation Express contract, the expense is $262,000, so we have a gross profit of $31,000 for the 4 months so far. So it might not be where we want to be, but it's a great start for the last 4 months only. I've also provided you with the 2012, the previous FBO's fuel sales, and the fuel sales for 2013. So you can see there that we're up 9% on an average of the 4 months. So we're not doing too bad for a new business. Does anybody have any questions with that?
Just a comment. I'm going to echo her comments, I guess. I've been on the board 9 years. Went out for FBO searches 3 different occasions.
Yes.
And I think we're very fortunate to pick Brad up. He's got a laundry list of experience, and I can tell you perhaps some of the biggest critics of the airport previously I've talked to, and those guys are happy with what's going on out there. It's going to still take some time, to get that via through the pilot food chain, so to speak. But I feel very comfortable and very good about the decisions that we made as a board to move forward with bringing him on. And there's a few other things that are going to come before the board with a couple of different capital expenditures we're going to have to make. For example, what do you call that, where you got to pull the bigger planes out?
The aircraft tug.
A tug. Mm-hmm. We've got to purchase a tug and a couple other things that we're going to have to make some additional investments out there, but it's all things that just help the airport. So,
any other questions for Kathy?
I have a couple more other things I'd like to update you on. As Commissioner Bohm said, I guess the way I feel is this is a brand new business for us. We have a reputation to mend and a reputation to build out there at the airport. We now have competitive fuel prices. I think that this report does show you that we are moving forward in the last 4 months. The corporate jet traffic has increased substantially. Of course, it's going to slow down as the winter months come upon us. But with your support, I'd like to thank you for that, because I really do feel that we're finally on the roll, that we really will become the world-class aviation gateway into St. Clair County Airport. So I'd like to thank you, Commissioners, and I'd like to thank you, Bill, also for your support. A couple more things I wanted to run by was Ron Marsh and I and his staff and airport staff have completed basically a lot of projects at the airport. We've worked very closely this summer, and I'd like to thank Ron, his staff, and airport staff for accomplishing a lot. We've really got a lot of projects done. The airport actually looks really good. If I could go back to the FBO facility that you purchased, the Shell Aviation signs have been installed. If you'd like to come out and look at them, they look really nice. The lobby area is the construction area is almost completely finished. I provided you with an AirNav, which is an aviation website that pilots, corporate or general aviation, can provide just a little bit of feedback, and I thought there was a couple positive comments on there that I thought you might want to look over. The premium corporate hangar, I guess we'll call it, the Michigan State Police have moved out. It has been cleaned, and we're ready. Once the storage that's in there now has been moved, we are ready to start marketing that hangar. So we may need to make some brochures and start moving on that, but we are ready to start marketing that. The yellow building, which is the Visitors Bureau building, is finished. We're just waiting on the water and sewer and the gas line. So we're almost to that point too. And this week, the Warner Brothers film crew visited your airport. They're searching for just one site, one film scene for a little boy his mother will put him on a small crop duster of some type of an airplane to go to a bigger town, is all I was told. But they spent the afternoon with me. They filmed and took several pictures out of every building that we have at the airport, taxiway, everything in that manner. So for this one scene. So they said that they would let us know before the first of the year whether or not they're interested in what we have or not. But there was 2 different sites that they actually really liked for their site. So that would be a great asset for the county itself. And the movie is called Sage and Avery. So they're supposed to start filming it in March. So we'll see where that goes. But I just thought I'd let you know. So is there any other questions?
Commissioner Graytop.
Kathy, on this one handout you have here, there are 2 comments that were published, kind of like a review almost.
Yes.
Where are these published?
They're on airnav.com.
Okay.
It's an aviation webpage that you can go to get information from any airport. Fuel prices, obviously, you can see the fuel prices are on the right.
Who sees these? All pilots? Is this
anybody?
All
Yep.
pilots?
Yep.
Okay. Both of these things are pretty glowing, and people that see that, if they've had bad thoughts and feelings about the airport in the past, this has to speak very well of our airport.
We need like I said, we've got a reputation to rebuild, and we're on our way.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Any other updates from commissioners regarding these matters, environmental or public works? Seeing none, any conceptual initiatives from administration?
No, not at this time.
We have no old business. We'll move to new business. The resolution for the 1337, 2013 County at Large Drainage Assessments. I see Commissioner Wiley here. If there are any questions regarding this.
I'd make the motion.
Do we have a second?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Tomlin. Any questions or discussion on this? Or it's pretty self-explanatory. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you. The Wetlands Habitat Restoration Grant Professional Services Contract. We have Director Bershew here, and we've got a lot of information on this. This is, I have to tell you, this is exciting.
That's good to hear. Thank you. You have a memo already at your spot. We did go through a qualification-based selection process in that we, through the Mitten website, asked for invited firms, qualified firms to give us a statement of qualifications. We had firms submit. The QBS committee and Mr. Tomian was a member of that committee, reviewed all the submissions, and then unanimously selected the top 3 firms that they thought looked best on paper. Those firms were then invited to a formal interview at Good County Park. And then from that process, the committee then unanimously agreed that Smith Group JJR, in their mind, was the most qualified to do this project. Based on that information, recommendation from the QBS committee, the Park Commission directed me to enter into discussions with Smith Group JJR on the specifics of how they would approach the work and how they would be compensated for the work. The first part of the process was they looked at the template for the county's professional services contract template, which they reviewed and found acceptable. There was one minor question that they asked, and Mr. Fletcher's firm agreed that, and other contractors had also agreed that that language could be modified. So then we went to the next step of defining the scope of the work and the compensation for that scope of the work, and that's the insert into the template that you have in front of you right now. All the firms that were competing for the project knew what the grant amount was for the project for both construction and professional services, so it was an open book. And over the last several weeks, Bob Doyle, principal with Smith Group JJR, who were the consultants for the Community Foundation's Blue Water River Walk project, and I worked over several weeks to come up with the scope of work. So if you have any questions on this, why don't we come on up, Bob? And if you have any questions on the scope of work, he and I could try to answer your questions or just say hi.
I'm just gonna make one comment for any of those that have not been down to the Riverwalk. You gotta go down there and check it out. I mean, it just totally different. It's unbelievable at what's being done down there, and I'm sure that south part, the county's portion, will look just as well.
Commissioner Graytop.
Mark, you said there were 5 bids?
Was it 7 or 9?
It was more than 5.
It was 7, I think.
Okay, I'm just curious what the range was. I mean, how close were some of them? Were they all close?
Well, the process is based on, is qualifications based, not on, it's not a numbers, you're not bidding the cost of your services. That part of the selection process was who's the best qualified to do this project.
All right.
And then based on the already agreed to budget that we as St. Clair County agreed to with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, specified how much we were going to spend on professional services for the project and how much we were going to spend on construction.
So when you find somebody that is qualified to do the work, they agree to work within that budget range?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Secondly, in at your places tonight, there is a big Excel spreadsheet that Bob put together that lists all the steps in the process and their estimated hours and the hourly rate for that person to do the project. And so that's kind of the template of how they plan to do the work that's required under the budget that's been set by the grant. Now, there are some unknowns in this project that we have from day one told the grant funding agency. Our goal is to connect the wetland directly to the St. Clair River so that it could actually be a fishery for fish spawning in the new reefs that we're constructing. We've always told them we don't know if that's possible, so there's some fluidity in this process, and the first part would be for Smith Group JJR to do the original engineering and determine whether that's feasible, and then we would sit down with our federal funding partners and talk about how we proceed. So there's some unknowns in here. There's some unknowns about environmental quality issues on the site. The site's been studied a lot, but we're proposing to excavate soil to hold water, and so we have to do our due diligence with the environmental conditions. So there's some unknowns there. And what we've also tried to build into the proposal in front of you is to kind of look beyond the grant and say if you want to do additional features, and with it being a county park, if we want boardwalks, interpretive panels, activity areas, they've built into their process a preliminary design of how those all facilities would work, so that when they construct the wetlands, all those additional features are already pre-visioned on the process. So if they build a berm, that's where a walkway is going to go, rather than they build the wetland and say, oh, I wish we would have put it over here, the boardwalk would have been better over here. So it's tried to be flexible in its approach, and knowing that it's a pretty complex project.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Howard?
Yes.
I know we've all been down there, and it's pretty impressive what's been done down there. But I took my wife down there yesterday morning. We walked the walkway, and then we went in the Maritime Center, and she liked that too, and she was really impressed. She really liked it. So we're going to make another trip. She really liked it. So.
Okay.
If I can invite Bob, one of the key attributes, and Carl, if I'm not saying this right or you disagree, tell me, because you're a key part of that committee. One of the key attributes for Smith Group JJR, other than the fact that they have done a wonderful job with the work on that site to date, is that they've done a wetland project at Milliken State Park on the Detroit riverfront. If maybe you can just spend a few minutes and talk about that.
Sure. Hi, I'm Bob Doyle. We did a similar scale project at Milliken State Park and creating a wetland that was designed to handle storm runoff from adjacent development as it's occurring. And actually, there's a proposal right now for a developer who's working with us to build something and then put stormwater into it. But we found a similar reaction there that we have seen to the improvements along the shoreline here in Port Huron, which is people are very enthusiastic about it, and it creates great habitat for fish and birds and wildlife, but it also creates great places for people to be. And I think this project here, the coastal wetland that's part of this grant, is actually going to be the crowning piece on the South Waterfront project that was started with the Community Foundation. So we're really looking forward to working through the design and getting it built.
Any other questions? Commissioner Tom.
I really don't have any questions, but I'd like to emphasize to the commission that, first of all, as Mark presented, Smith Group JJR has been involved in the rest of the riverfront project, and so they're very familiar with the site. Secondly, on page 2 of first page of Mark's letter to us, he mentions the fact that Pam Blau of PMB is going to be involved in part of the design. She's worked on other projects in our county, and they've come off very well, very successful. And finally, they've employed a Port Huron-based engineering firm, BMJ, to do work on the project too. So I think it's a good team that they've developed.
Okay, any other comments?
Just one quick comment. I walked through Milliken Park last Saturday with my wife. I was down there, and I told her, you got to check this out. And we just ran through there quick, so it's cool.
And I'm assuming that this will all be coordinated to some extent with the St. Clair County Community Foundation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments? Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, we need a motion on this wetlands contract.
I'll move that we send this wetlands contract on to the full board for consideration in our next meeting.
Support. Second by Commissioner Riley. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. The landfill financial presentation.
Nope, you just missed
one.
I'm sorry. The Blue Waters Trail. Oh, congratulations.
You don't work for the landfill.
What? No. That's okay if you forgot me.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. I'm Lori Eschenberg with the Planning Commission, And I was before you March 21st this year to ask you if I could apply for this grant. And you said yes, and I did, and we got it. So we were really happy about that. This is a 7-partner grant that includes the Thumb, and it's Blue Water Area Convention Visitors Bureau. It's all those Discover the Blue communities. It's called Trail Towns. And basically, I think I've talked to you about this several times. It's bringing home the economic dollar that walks, bikes, and paddles through your region and your town. But it really encourages keeping your brand and the uniqueness of each town. And I was just reading the planning magazine as I was sitting there, and there's hard data from years and years where this has been incorporated before of how this works and how it brings tourist dollars and economic development dollars. So basically what is before you is the grant that's a $50,365 grant from the state coastal management program, and then there's a 1-to-1 match, and there's 7 partners that have either contributed cash or in kind. And we're partnering again with LIA, Land Information Access Association in Traverse City. And Tip of the Thumb Heritage Water Trail and the Blue Ways, as you know, which is our project. So it's pretty dynamic with some private and some public partners. And I think that's part of the reason why also it got a good score. And it also dovetails with what the director just said, all our beautiful water and trails, and this kind of dovetails with all that, bringing people in to enjoy them. So is there any questions on what I've presented in front of you?
Any questions? Commissioner Graytop.
I really don't have a question, but more of a comment. I think this ties in with a lot of the things that we've been talking about doing in the last few years, the Blue Meets Green project and some of that stuff, and capitalizing on our recreational area that we have available and using the waterways that we have in this area to develop this recreation and to draw people to our area. And I believe that everything that you're doing does exactly that. And it's a great boost, and that ties in exactly with a lot of the thinking that we've been doing. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. It will also tie in with, as you hopefully all know, our new National Water Trail designation for our one route, the Island Loop route, is the first National Water Trail in the state of Michigan right now, and the 11th in the entire nation. So we hope to get a big bang out of that next summer.
Any other questions for Laura? Seeing none, thank you.
And I have one side note.
Yep.
The gentleman that first addressed you at the first committee meeting, he was talking about fatalities and car crashes. Just so you know, we have, I do GIS. We have crash data from 2001. I have a database of every crash that's taken place in the county, and it's marked out by if it's fatal or not. And I have it through 2009, and I today asked SEMCOG for the updated data. So I could actually make you a map of crash from the last 12 years crashes. So just so you know, a lot of that stuff exists.
Electronically?
Yeah, in GIS, I could map it out, and we have it in a database if you wanted a table also.
Can you send it?
Yep, we'll talk, and I want to see how you want it broken down.
The services you provide through there are amazing. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks.
I would entertain a motion at this time to
So move.
for the program grant for the Blue Water Trail.
Second?
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, now we can have the landfill financial presentation that we all been waiting for.
With bated breath. Well, good evening, Commissioners. This is a pretty dynamic time for the landfill. We are about to receive our second research and development and demonstration project permit, which will allow us to expand and operate the septic bioreactor, greatly expanded from our original project. We're looking at the potential of expanding the landfill with the standpoint of construction and demolition potentially. We're considering potential property acquisitions. We're doing a lot of things. A
Coupled with that, as you all are very attuned to, is our efforts to procure some outside waste streams from Canada, which is an ongoing process, as well as, losing my train of thought. Well, what I thought that we needed to do at the administrator's request, which I'm sure comes from the commissioners, is to kind of step back and evaluate where we're at. I was up here earlier this year with some projections and some numbers, kind of looking towards the future. And based on that evaluation, what was presented, then the decision was made, well, we have to make some changes. We have to look at tipping fees, we have to look at the additional waste. So those initiatives are in place and ongoing, and I have worked in some revised projections and revised assumptions, which I can cover during the presentation. But I wanted to recap where we're at and take a look at the future. And I'm going to present this fairly, or actually pretty simply. I'm going to focus on 4 different areas, which are shown here, and you have a PowerPoint to follow along. The first one being operating revenues. The revenues that I'm speaking of are listed here on your PowerPoint. Functionally, the biggest portion of those are our disposal fees, or what we call our tipping fees. It's what folks pay us for us to dispose of their trash in the landfill. Of course, landfill gas to energy, electric conversion, those royalty sales make up a significant chunk of our revenues. And as I noted, the projections that you're going to see here shortly include approved and proposed tipping fee increases for the future and assume target volumes of waste from Canada. With that, these are what the numbers are projecting out to be over the next 5 years. I work closely with Carrie Hepting on looking at everything that goes into this line of numbers. There's a whole another spreadsheet that goes into this. But as you can see, we're projecting our revenues to come up fairly dramatically. This year, we're going to be about the same place we've been for the previous 3 or 4 years, right about that $5 million gross revenue mark. But we're projecting near $7 million in 2014, and again, that's based on tipping fee increases and increased waste from Canada. Are there any questions about that before I?
No, but I'll go back to this Canadian thing, because when you talk about that assumption, we've been talking about getting additional trash for 6 months now, and as we sit here today, we have not been able to secure that. So I want to be
Yes.
make that no mistake, because when we talked to the municipalities before about holding the line on their rates, that was based on being able to get the additional trash volume. So I don't want to sugarcoat it either. It's been 6 months in the market, not happening yet, so.
Yeah,
I'll let you
and
go.
it's ongoing.
Yeah.
I still feel positive, but you're exactly right. It's not here yet.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Matt, could you go
Yes.
back to that slide?
Mhm.
In
Excuse me, I'm trying to, don't have a mouse. My apologies.
slide 4 is got the information.
He's there.
So the difference between 2013 and 2014, we have a rate increase that takes effect next month, correct?
That's correct on the first.
And that's not for residential contractors. This is, which type of waste is?
Commercial and industrial waste streams.
So would most of that $2 million increase then be from that rate increase, or does that include a substantial amount of?
The
Canadian
larger
cash?
portion of the increase would be due to the additional waste stream. That's the larger share of that increase.
But correct me if I'm wrong, that 14 also has an increase in residential tipping fees proposed to it?
No, not in 2014.
Not, okay.
And that was the point I was going to make, is that we're projecting, you know, a 20% increase in revenue, but we're not going to achieve that with the rate increases that we've already passed. It involves a substantial amount of Canadian waste, and here we are in December. We're talking about 2014, it's another month, so we need a larger rate increase in order to meet that projection, I would assume.
Well,
Commissioner Rushing.
What
has a
additional
question.
tonnage have you got figured into that above and beyond the commercial and industrial waste? That'll get you to the 6.9 million.
I've got a figure in the
You have
projection.
177, I believe, or right around 170,000 tons currently? And
About
what-
175,000.
Okay, 175. What are you projecting, 200, 225, or? to
About
get-
93,000 additional tons of
So
waste
if we don't get
in
to what you're
2014.
addressing, we don't get to 260, we're not going to hit those figures.
Well, that's correct. Again, this is a projection, and that was the assumption.
Now, if you-
But I do want to mention that I agree that the fact it's not here. I am positive on, and feel very good that we are going to get it. And the thing about the projection for 2014 is that the number I have assumes essentially 10 trucks per day for the entire year. If we're still in the process, which we will be, of obtaining those contracts, you know, we can ramp up, if you will, and, you know, contract, if we don't get all of that from day one, 1st of January, which we won't, we can work up to that and then account for that by saying, let's take 12 trucks, like from June on, and we can make those goals, assuming we get the contracts.
I understand your point, and I also think that, you know, you have, on the expense side, you have landfill cell expansions. If we're not receiving that large amount of waste, there'd probably be less expansion, or the expansion could be pushed out a little bit farther. But it's such a huge number, and it's going to take us at least 6 months to actually start receiving the revenue, that I think we need to revisit the rates. I don't think we can make this on our current schedule without even having, you know, a prospect at this point. The year begins in 4 weeks.
Well, we do have prospects, definitely.
So,
But
but I just think, you know, we've postponed dealing with these landfill rates for how long?
since 1999.
Since 1998. And I'm just concerned that this approach is going to postpone it longer. And this landfill fund is very important to the operation of the county. It not only covers our landfill operations, but we use this to support roads in the townships. We use it to support central dispatch. And if we deplete these dollars, or we continue to postpone the rate increases, we're going to get ourselves into a real political problem, because we'll be faced with either cutting some of those services or hitting our residents with really large rate increases.
I think, from as chair, I think that you're absolutely right, and I think maybe to proceed here, maybe that's something we need to look at one of the first meetings in the new year.
Let's go through all the financial pieces, I guess, and then maybe at the end of it, next steps. What are we going to do, or what?
Just a quick question, if you know this, and this goes back to Carl's question. Just the rate increases on the commercial industrial of that 1.9 million, how much is that going to raise?
I think it's on the order of about 600,000.
About a third.
Okay.
And I agree, we should go through the whole thing, but I wanted to plant that seed with all of you, so we're looking through the rest of these slides, not wait till we get to the end.
Well, and the rest of you well know this. I mean, we've had every municipality, township, talk to them about holding their rates. If we have the ability to bring in additional waste volume, we're not going to look at increasing rates. But if it doesn't happen, and to your point, Carl, it hasn't happened, so if we are going to do this, I think, there again, I'm jumping the gun, but put an action plan and to say as of this particular date, because we can always not raise them, but we darn near well perhaps need to put them on notice, so when they're going through their budgeting process, that this could be an anticipated or expected, give them ample time to plan for it.
I agree, and as we've talked about before in other meetings, I'm not proposing that we have a huge rate increase next month. We told those other municipalities that we'd give them a year's notice.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think-
substantial notice, yeah.
I think we're at the point where we have to really consider what's actually likely to happen and give our municipalities notice. Otherwise, we're going to miss that opportunity and we'll be faced with postponing it another year.
Okay, you want to continue, Anna?
Operating expenses include the items shown here. Landfill operator fees, that's the contractor we have on site who manages the waste. Is probably one large chunk of that, as is site engineering. As you all are keenly aware, we do spend a lot of money with our engineering consulting firm, primarily because we're doing a lot of bigger picture stuff with the bioreactor. Leachate treatment and disposal, and something that we don't often think about, but depreciation of capital assets. That runs into this category as an expense for us. As we fill landfill cells, they have less airspace, so we have to deplete that asset. Just physical buildings, pumps, vehicles, all of those things get depreciated, of course, over time, and that hits this category as well. Our projections include increases on an annual basis for closure, post-closure costs. As we fill the landfill, our closure liability increases. So those are included in here. Also, our debt service payments that are going to be coming in the future. Actually, next year, we will start paying on the principal for our first SRF loan. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 per year, and that is included in these projections as well. And additional to that, the projections on expenses include a 1.8% inflation factor built in for the entire period we're considering. You can see the operating expenses increase as well, but not to the degree that we've projected revenues, again, with the assumptions that we have in place. There are additional expenses to handling additional waste. Our contractor on site gets paid by the ton for managing the waste, therefore more tonnage, more expense that we have for him. But as you can see, if we can realize the assumptions and projections that we're making, that gap between the operating revenue and the operating expenses is growing, and that's the goal we're looking for here. Solvency and making sure that we're bringing in more than we're spending. Because as Commissioner Tomian pointed out, there is other uses for money in the landfill fund. Capital projects, you've seen a version of this slide before. We talked about it earlier in the year. I have I've changed the gas system expansion line since you saw it earlier in the year to put monies towards that on an annual basis. What we found now that we've been up and running our gas to energy plant is that we need to be very proactive with our collection system, and that means repairs, that means expansions of the system, means improvements as they are appropriate to do. So we've allocated annual dollars to maintain our gas system, to provide all the gas we can to that gas to electric plant. The big ticket items next year, the big ticket item is cell 4 construction. We have an engineering estimate of $2.2 million for that cell. It's an 8-acre cell right adjacent to cell 3 in the extreme southeast corner of the landfill. What I want you to remember, though, is that I don't think that you have these numbers highlighted because it's printed in black and white, but for the Cell 4 and the septic bioreactor expansion projects, those are going to be fully funded by the SRF loan at a 50% principal discount. So while I'm showing the actual dollars we're going to write checks for, we are getting reimbursed for those monies from SRF as we spend those dollars. So there's a net zero increase or decrease. You know, it doesn't hit us on a year-to-year basis. Of course, the debt service will, but on a cash flow basis, it doesn't get us, other than some interest payments annually on what we're spending as we go. But again, the first 2014, we're projecting to spend a little over $3 million on Cell 4 in the first phase of the bioreactor expansion. Again, 50% discount on our loan. That full $3 million, you know, that's essentially written off. When the SRF gives the money out, the first monies they dole out go towards, you know, come out of that forgiveness portion. So our interest accrual won't start until the full 50% is used up. That might be a little bit too much information, but.
Well, if I could,
Commissioner Rusty.
you're telling me that these figures you have here, because I already went ahead and found out what the deficit that we're going to have if we take your capital expenditures, of the 5.7 deficit that I came up with, how much is going to be forgiven that we don't have to pay?
Half.
Because when you go to your last page here, looking at our deficits, how much is going to be forgiven? Because I'm showing right now, with what you've given us, we're going to be 5.7 in the hole.
5.7 million?
Yes.
Well, I think we're just over 6 million here. Half
That-
of that is forgiven. 3 million of that is forgiven.
Okay, so that's what I want to know, the actual 3 million, but if we continue on, but I'm still coming up with this 2.7 million with the projections you're giving us, but if I'm incorrect, we'll get there.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could you go back a slide again, Matt?
Sure.
I just have one other question about that slide. Did cell 7B, did it get completed according to budget?
Yes, actually it was under budget, and I neglected to update this. It came in about 575,000.
That's great. Another comment, I just think when we go to take a look at this in more detail in the future, we need to have those revenues broken out. We need a more sophisticated spreadsheet than this, because, you know, we're just learning now about what some of those numbers meant, and all of a sudden there's $3 million more revenue than I thought we had. So, you know, if we're going to be doing a comprehensive rate study, I think we need to look at all those.
Well, and we did discuss that before this presentation, and we went a direction here, thinking in the public forum, in this forum, that might be the best thing. We can certainly expand this in the future to meet your needs. Oh, one note, if I can, before I move on. I have Cell 8 construction slotted for the year 2017. That's based on the additional waste that we're projecting to come in. Earlier in the year, we had this construction under 2018, but I bumped it up ahead a year based on the projections. So when we have to build Cell 8, depends upon how quickly we fill everything up. It's pretty simple. And I've discussed all that, so I'll move by. The last line, and maybe the most important, I won't say the most important, but a very critical line is a term I'm going to use as liquidity. What it really is net available assets in accounting terminology. But liquidity, you can think of it as the additional money in your checkbook that's free to spend on, or keep, or invest, or do whatever. That we get to that line through a number of considerations, including the change in our capital assets, figuring depreciation, the related debts. It's an accounting approach and it is not a direct addition or subtraction from on the table I'm showing you. You can't get to that number from the numbers above it, I guess, is my only point there. I was asked early in the year, where do we need to be on that number to be comfortable? And I'm thinking a $2 to $3 million level is a good place for us to be. That allows us cash available to address any urgent environmental concerns if they should arise. It allows us the flexibility to address perhaps other initiatives outside of the landfill or initiatives within the landfill that do come up and we decide we want to approach. So I think that's a comfortable level and a prudent level for us to shoot to attain.
Just one comment. I've had many, you know, I've dealt with Jim Logston, our consultant, a lot on that, and that's the same area that Jim says you need to be in, just because you can get something, I hate to say, bad can happen to you, and you can burn through cash in a hurry in the landfill, so you need to...
Well, I've said a lot of times that we're blessed with wonderful geology out there, being on 80 feet of clay. That takes away a lot of worry from a liability and pollution control standpoint. That being said, running a landfill is, I don't want to say it's a risky operation, but you have to do it right because you can get into trouble. So we're doing it right, by the way. So these are the liquidity numbers that come up from those calculations that we're not really going through in detail. But you can see we're in that $2 to $3 million range and projecting out accordingly. I guess I don't have a whole lot more to say about that, except that we have, perhaps 10 years ago, that line was up in the $11 million range. And for a number of reasons, partly because we have not increased our tipping fee structure since 1999. That number has dwindled over time. We've used up some of those available assets in the landfill fund for building things on the landfill, for starting the bioreactor, for other initiatives outside the landfill. So we need, it's been a couple years below $1 million, and frankly, that's not where we should be, and I don't think that's prudent for us. So we need to get that built back up. We are projecting at the end of this year over $2 million, but that's primarily because we permitted a landfill expansion that gives us much more airspace to fill in the future. And the liability calculation for closure, sorry, I'm talking too much and getting tongue-tied. For closure and post-closure is dependent upon how much available space you have and how much of that you filled up. So the smaller the ratio, the lower your liability. And we actually lowered our closure and post-closure liability that we're required to keep by permitting that expansion. Therefore, it made our bottom line look better.
Commissioner Rushing.
Just so I'm not misunderstanding this, I imagine we got like a $2.4 million liquidity starting point. But if I take your projected revenues with an additional 90,000 tons of garbage to get to those revenues that's expanded out, you got your operating expenses. That should be pretty much what it takes to run the place. So those would be good figures. But once I take your capital expenditures and add those up, even if you're getting $3 million, because your capital expenditures are roughly $6.7 million, you're going to be forgiven $3 million of that.
Mm-hmm.
When I get all done with this, I've got us $2.7 million in the hole. And even if I take us with the $2.4 million, we're still $300,000 in the hole. So just the way I'm looking at what you gave us.
Right. But again, a caution, you can't get here directly from here. Because as you look, maybe I don't want to get in an area where I'm not very good at.
I can talk to you later.
Try to help address that a little bit?
I'll talk to Carrie later.
Okay.
And could you,
Commissioner Thomas.
I'm sorry. You said that the fact that we've created more landfill space reduces our post-closure liability. How does that happen? If we're creating more landfill space, aren't we creating more post-closure liability?
Well, what's different about our expansion is that we didn't expand our footprint. The calculation is the cost of closure on an area.
Okay, so because we're overfilling and we were already funding the cap,
Correct.
that.
The cap was already accounted for, but we're gonna put more garbage under the cap now, without having to build a significantly larger cap.
So that doesn't really reduce our post-closure liability. Our post-closure liability would remain the same.
I think if I could interject here, the post-closure liability is also predicated on how long you think the life expectancy of the landfill is. As we extend that life expectancy out, the liability goes down.
Maybe I can clarify. The liability is simply the ratio of how, you've got the cost to close your landfill and conduct post-closure, which is a set cost. When we permitted the expansion, that actually went up slightly, the total cost to do closure and post-closure. The liability, or what we are required to have on hand today, is based on how much we filled versus how much is yet to fill. So that ratio went way down because we more than doubled the size of our landfill, but didn't increase the total cost of closure and post-closure significantly with that expansion. So the big number that we ultimately have to pay, that we're required to do all this work, changed a little, but the ratio changed a lot, if you will. It went from 50% to about 28%, I believe. So when you do the math, 50% times the number versus 28% of a number, that's why our liability actually did go down.
I understand how the DEQ has you calculate that, and I don't take issue with that. But, you know, one of the problems that we really have in the real world, not the DEQ calculations, is if we go out of business, and, you know, this isn't like a water or wastewater plant where we have customers that are connected to us and they have no place else to go.
Agreed.
If we run into problems, all the contractors can drive their trucks in a different direction, and we have no customers. We don't have any contracts with the cities or the townships for revenue going forward. So the county government is going to be stuck with a total post-closure cost. And so it's not enough to just look at the DEQ's formula for calculating this. We need to take a look at the real-world formula for it to make sure that we're keeping our reserves where they belong. But now that we have another $3 million that we're going to pick up as a result of the grant, that we're probably in much better position.
Well, and to address your point about having those monies available, we have discussed on a couple of occasions the idea of contributing to a closure, post-closure fund, if you will, and allocating more cash towards that as time goes on than what we're required to by accounting practices and the DEQ. So that's something we're under consideration, that we've been discussing and kicking around.
It's, you know, there are landfills that have gotten into trouble because they have a lot of area permitted, but they close before they fill them. And if you don't have enough money to close what you've already filled, you're putting yourself in financial danger, because you have no other way to raise the revenue once we're closed. And as we've talked about before, there's a lot of technology that's changing out there. If all of a sudden the type of solid waste disposal we have becomes obsolete, or obsolete in just a few years, and we don't have enough money set aside to actually cap the landfill, it's going to be a liability of the general fund.
Question, Howard.
Yes, Commissioner Smasko.
Matt, on the issue brought up by Commissioner Tamian, my understanding and impression of our operations landfill is that we are well managed for our current post-closure projections.
I would say yes.
We don't have some underfunded liability or some issue that's out there that we have not addressed. Is that fair to say?
Yes, we're meeting our requirements.
So I think that piece of it, I think, is in order. The other piece that bothers me a little bit about some of the way the discussion went, a comment made by Commissioner Tamian and reiterated by yourself, that these revenues, you know, from the landfill vis-a-vis rates and so forth, can be used to fund other operations of county government. I've come to the conclusion based on things I've looked at, the Corporation Council commentary, other matters, that we actually cannot do that. That we can properly manage the landfill to adequately fund operations, debt service, attract fuel for the bioreactor, other expenditures associated with operations, capital improvements, land acquisition, things like that. And to some degree, that money that we raise there will benefit the county because we're not needing to supplant our landfill with general funds. But unless I'm wrong, and maybe Gary can comment on it, I believe that we have to be cautious on where we go with rates and revenues because it has to be related more to the operation of the landfill than, say, a cash cow or a golden goose or a free-for-all as far as rates and where we go. And is that correct, Gary, or not correct? Generally speaking.
Yeah, I'd say generally speaking. So if somebody wanted, I'd just like to leave it at that. Yeah, it's an issue that we need to be cognizant of and keep our eye on.
Okay, any other?
I want to clarify, I'm not suggesting that you haven't been putting aside the money that the DEQ calls for and it's been properly funded. I'm not questioning that. Do you have a study that says that if we were closed tomorrow, that we have enough money in the landfill fund to fund post-closure costs?
No, we have enough money, I would say, to conduct closure, but we would be short for the total tab if we walked away from the landfill tomorrow.
Is walking away from the landfill a realistic possibility? I mean,
I've had it happen once in my career. We had the DEQ close the landfill in Dowagiac.
for what reason?
Pollution.
For what?
For groundwater pollution.
Okay. Do we have groundwater pollution issues at our landfill?
No, again,
well
we're blessed
maintained
with
there?
great geology and good practice.
And I don't mind, I think you're correct, we raise revenues and put more into post-closure. I think that's adequate, it's entirely appropriate. I don't think there would be an issue with that because it's directly related to landfill. I just want to make the point that I don't want people to think there's some issue with a post-closure cost because my understanding is it really isn't a very realistic possibility at this point. There may be some extreme case, but I think our landfill's going to operate. Everything I can see, we have a system out there for monitoring our wastewater, treating the wastewater and so forth. As far as I know, it's all up to snuff. I don't see that as a realistic issue. Not that things can't happen, but to raise rates or whatever we're going to do to increase more post-closure costs would make sense. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't want people to be thinking there's some issue out there that's not. I mean, I think you're being overly cautious maybe on some of it.
Well, one of the things that is a realistic possibility that happens frequently is the DEQ and the EPA change their regulations. And if they change them dramatically, you could be forced into closure.
I suppose the government can always regulate you out of business, but
we're different than a lot of other landfills that are owned privately. I mean, we can't go bankrupt.
Tell Detroit that.
Well, and Mike, I guess my last comment to this discussion on how much cash today we have inside and what we're doing in the future is, it's not a full philosophical discussion, but it's a discussion of where we're comfortable, you know, as a body. How much money is enough? Where are we going to head? Do we have a plan? Are we going to shoot for a target in the future? What is the future of landfilling? You made a good point there. 30 years from now, it's not going to be what it is today. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know it's not going to be what we're doing today. So this is a big discussion and a deep discussion to decide these things, but it's a well taken.
I think this is good financial information for this evening. It just reiterates, you know, this landfill's been on our radar screen. We've been talking about it for quite some time now. I think come January 1, there's going to be a couple things that we really need to hone in on. One of the discussions is going to be increasing tipping fees. One of the initiatives I'm a big proponent of is the direct bill with the municipalities to the cities, no different than what we're doing in Cotterville Township right now. That eliminates the ability for us to get stung. I've been on the board 9 years now. We got beat for $180,000 one time, $300,000 another time, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other, if we looked, you know, into it. So there's a few different things. I guess we've got to get an action plan together, talk about putting the municipalities on notice, you know, if possible, rate increases. And they all know, this is, man, you know how many times I've done the rubber chicken circuit telling the landfill story in the last year. I've been everywhere, and they are very well aware of those issues. We're not gonna make those, decisions tonight, but we definitely, we'll have to address it.
And if I can just make one quick note that I didn't call out earlier, talking about future rate increases. These projections include a $2 per ton increase for residential MSW in the year 2016. And that's the only other rate increase that's included in these projections.
Is that $2 per month?
Per ton.
At each house? If my memory's correct, about a ton to ton and a half per household?
Yeah, the industry thing is a ton and a half per household per year. So if it's a ton and a half, if it's a $2 increase, you're talking $3 a year.
14 cents a month.
Pretty small.
Okay, any other questions for Matt? Seeing none, just in response to Commissioner Bone's comment about working with municipalities, I was visiting with Birchville Township Supervisor Mike Apple, and they're going to go to township-wide collection of waste. And I mentioned he might want to check about having it contracted directly to the landfill, as you were suggesting.
I'm going to. I think if you talk to Matt and if you talk to Gary about it, they feel very strongly we should be able to we should go direct bill with the municipalities and townships. When we actually did it in Cotterville, there was a substantial savings for them by doing
25,000, they say.
It was 17, 18, and I'm not going to pick on haulers, but
township budget, that's.
You got to remember too, there is trash, make it no mistake, there is trash that is leaving St. Clair County. I can show you documentation or information on increase in volumes for particular reasons. So we are losing by not having that mechanism in place.
If that mechanism is in place, they want to haul it out of the county, they get the bill.
Right, there's no incentive to take it somewhere else.
So,
Commissioner Rushing.
Howard, that wouldn't be an actual savings to the township budget, that'd be an actual savings, because you can only charge your millage for the cost that it has to do the thing. You can't overcharge because you're gonna direct bill the county for the township. So if Cotterville is making a savings, they can't just pocket that money. They have to give the reduced. That's what your millage is raised on.
different people pay there were different ways. I know in Riley Township, your setup is different than City of Marysville pays for half. And I mean, people are all over the board on how they handle their payment of trash.
Right. The hauling contracts themselves, most of them are one full thing. You pick it up, you take it to the landfill, you pay the disposal fee. We pay you so much per household per month. That's how most of the contracts are set up. But I know that the funding mechanism for the townships is vastly different. Taxes for one.
Majority of them in Home County, because I've spent some time with one of the haulers down there, they actually are shocked that we don't do direct bill. Majority of the municipalities down there do that.
I think, I'm just curious, is there a resolution or procedure we could put in place, essentially saying municipalities from now on, this is the way the county's going to operate, it's going to be direct billing to you?
Yeah, I think you and I have been talking about this for a long time. Not only do we think you can, you should, because what it means is to support their refuse pickup, the county's taking the credit risk.
Right.
Because if somebody falls behind, what you say is, well, are we gonna leave the city of Marysville with trash sitting all over the city, stinking the whole place up? And you go, no, we can't do that, so we're gonna let them haul, and they promise we're gonna pay and whatever. And then, so the county's taking the credit risk to support the collection for the municipality. If they direct pay, then the county doesn't take the credit risk, and it's really unfair to the county taxpayers. And we've eaten 300, 350, I don't know.
300, 180 on another case.
Yeah, some big numbers. Because, and it all came out of one hauler, and it was, whatever. So it's just, it's not the way to do it.
Let's make that a goal to work on in the new year.
bad business model.
Does it have to be contractual, Gary? Do you have to have contracts to do that, or can we do it administratively?
No, what we would, the board had passed a resolution stating, due to the credit risk that the county's shouldering, if there are large collection contracts for these municipalities, either that we're gonna have substantial bonds that guarantee we get paid, or it's gonna be direct pay. If there's a substantial bond, it's gonna be built into the rate, so what they'll do is direct pay.
Excellent. Let's move on that.
It's bad the
Can
way
we,
it
can
is.
we have can we have a resolution of that nature prepared for action? I mean, why not?
Let's, I think in January, do a comprehensive on everything. We may even have to do a workshop on this, but this, we're all very well versed with our landfill issues. We've talked about it for a long time. Cities and municipalities are very well aware of what we had discussed, and I don't think there's anybody that.
I think a workshop would be good, because there's gonna be some minuses to this too. Right now, you're thinking it's all positive, so get it all on the table and have a workshop on it.
Okay, did you want to finish up your presentation, Matt?
No, I've kind of taken it off the
Oh,
screen.
okay.
So if you folks are done, I'm done. For
Okay.
tonight, anyway. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, we have a landfill consulting service agreement with Jim Loxton.
Make a motion, we send this on to the full board. Support.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is passed. We have a Metropolitan Planning Commission reappointment. Don't think I would entertain
I make
Commissioner
a
Roberts.
motion that we reappoint Lynn Sikori and Mr. Bob Sheehy and Mr. Robert Tansky to the Metropolitan Planning Commission, taking note that there is one vacancy for a member at large.
I support that with a comment. I have one from gentleman from District 4 that had served years ago and has got an application going to be turned in to fill that vacancy.
Excellent. That would be for the at-large position.
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, Park and Recreation Commission reappointment.
I would make the motion as presented.
Support.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Aeronautics Advisory Board appointments.
Motion as,
You got two here for one spot, or no?
Yes. Yes.
where are we looking?
I would,
For the South Representative, Ms. Worthington is seeking reappointment,
Yeah.
and so is Brad Schreiner. So you have to make a decision between the two.
Oh, well, Brad is our FBO.
Correct.
I would make a motion for Brad.
For Brad?
support.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the appointment of Brad Schreiner to the Aviation Board?
Glenn Christensen.
And Glenn Christensen, yeah.
And Glenn Christensen.
And Glenn Christensen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. The Airport Zoning Board of Appeals appointments.
Make a motion that reappoint Mr. Dean Bolderoff, Mr. Frank Ludwig, that we appoint Brad Shiner to that number 3 position, reappoint Mr. Dan Sauvé, and we include for number 5 position, Victor Coletto, to the Airport Zoning Board of Appeals.
Any questions?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. The Smiths Creek Activity Report, I think we talked about that. Any questions? Matt's still here, he hasn't run away yet. Seeing none, I would, any other environmental matters?
Just one, Howard.
Yes.
I guess this is the right place for what it took your place, because you were over in Nebraska. So I got 3 quick items as far as metro planning. One, we'll be working with the other counties, jointly St. Clair, Genesee, Huron, Sanilac, Tuscaloosa, and Lapeer. But SEMCOG, we're going to continue our relationship with them, and they're also not pursuing funds at this time. The second one, potentially moving the Amtrak station that's currently at 16th Street. They're looking into that, the Railroad, CN Railroad and Amtrak, over to Port Huron Township. Putting a new building and a parking lot there, so that's potentially going forward. And the last one was, it looks like Fort Gratiot. They had the Algonac master plan. Fort Gratiot is looking at the metro planning to do the master plan, and also include a grant for the coastal zone management. And our metro planning is not in the position of going out and taking business away from other planners, but they are in a position to do one a year in St. Clair County.
Okay, thank you. There's reports from Enbridge, the people putting in the, replacing the oil line. Park and Rec financial documents are here, and the Road Commission Department of Public Safety 2014 meeting schedule is included for those of you that are involved in that. At this time, I would entertain a motion to receive and file packets and information. Moved by Commissioner Graycop, supported.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Support.
We are adjourned.
At this time, I'd like to call the Ways and Means Committee to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Tamiya?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Baum?
Here.
Commissioner Riley?
Here.
Commissioner Greatop?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here. Okay, do we have any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Now, I'd like to have a motion.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Do we have any citizens wishing to be heard at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to updates. Do we have any updates? Any conceptual initiatives? Okay, we'll move on to old business. We have no old business, so we'll move on to new business. 7A. Resolution 1333 establishing per dimes for boards and commissions.
Make a motion, we send it on to the full board. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. 7B, Resolution 1334, waiving interest accrued on taxes collected by local units.
Motion to move to full board.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. 7C, Resolution 1336, establishing wages for canoe.
Motion to send it on to the full board.
Second.
Any discussion?
Bill, are there any changes? I didn't have time to fly spec that. Can you synopsize any changes that may be in that?
No, there are no changes, no increases in compensation.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Okay, we'll move on to 7D. Resolution 1338, establishing road commission compensation.
Motion to send it to the full board.
Support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
No changes in that either.
Okay, moving on to 7E, payroll service agreement extension with RISA.
Motion to full board.
Support. Any discussion?
Question for Bill. What's your assessment on that, Bill? Is that something that we should be looking at making any changes, put out to bid, or is that just something we kind of roll along with?
RISA?
Yeah.
We actually used to do payroll in-house, and when we took it out, we saved a ton of money by actually having.
Remember we
to do
did
that.
it, but is there other entities? I mean, how's that going? I realize the change is that going well. Any glitches? Any?
No, actually, it's going very well, and they were very instrumental in our changeover of all of our accounting system, which included our payroll system.
Been beneficial.
Yes, it has. And we have looked over the last, maybe year and a half, we have looked at other avenues of doing our payroll. Most everything that we have seen so far has been extremely expensive, certainly something we cannot afford to even contemplate
That's
at
fine.
this point.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passed. Moving on to 7F, Workforce Development Board reappointment.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we reappoint Mrs. Patricia Anger for a term ending August 1st, 2015.
We have support.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passed.
3 vacancies.
Moving on to 7G, Land Bank Authority reappointments.
Chairman, I would move that we reappoint Mr. Jay DeBoyer and Mrs. Pauline Rep to the Land Bank.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passed. Moving on to 7H, Library Request, Manning Table Edition.
Hello. I'm not going to speak long, but I just do want to let you know that the Library Administration is continuing our efforts to identify efficiencies, workflow, and hoping to put together structure that makes sense for the best public service that we can. So we have identified a need in the library structure, and that is a librarian 2 to help us to identify circulation concerns that impact access to information and materials. We're hoping that this position will assist us with training in core competencies for our staff, as well as meeting circulation challenges as the library evolves for customer service, as well as identifying and assisting with training for consistent public service with regards to the circulation of the library materials. And so that's where we are headed. This individual would be a member of the AFSCME union with no direct supervisory responsibilities other than to guide and lead the circulation activities under the supervision of management or administration.
Mr. Chair.
Well, talking to earlier, Bill Graytop and I did, and the complete funding will come out of the library budget.
I would move the approval of the addition of a Library 2 position to the Manning table.
Have support?
Support.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passed. Okay, at this time, do we have any other Ways and Means Matters?
David, I got a quick one. I should have talked to it about the updates. The actuarial report, I don't know, some of the commissioners, you got the opportunity to attend that. I know you've got copies of those in front of you. The retirement, the pension piece is in pretty good shape. The healthcare piece, even with some of the changes we made, it's better. And when I first was becoming the, board chairman, there was 5 to 7 years left in it, and we were done. And we had to take some steps to address those, and a couple of the different changes that we actually made in the healthcare piece resulted in a huge retirement reduction in liability, $135 million, if I'm not mistaken. Gary's got that there, by doing some of the shifts on the 65, the post-65, which was massive. But make it no mistake, we probably doubled the life of it. It's not that, we were able to do it all in one swoop, but these are the things that we're going to have to continue to look at. We're going to have to continue to talk about. I did go in front of the retirement luncheon the other day to talk about it, and I don't, Bill will tell you, I don't sugarcoat things when I go in there, and probably not the most popular guy in the room, but when I'm delivering that information, I feel very comfortable about telling them, factual stuff, and I think at the end of the day, they appreciate it, but it's one of those things we got to keep continuing to monitor, and we're in better shape than most. So when you talk about a 27% funded and you're in better shape than most, that's not a St. Clair County issue. That is a issue statewide, and I think it's just that particular systems that were put in place many and many years ago, they're just not sustainable. So it is what it is. So read that stuff, and if you guys have any questions, you can ask Bill about it.
Well, I was looking at it, and you could answer this. I'm showing that we got the 135 million, but didn't we have 90-some thousand after the actuary adjustment?
90 million. We're still at 90. Yeah, probably 110. I mean, we're still.
Okay.
You
I'll read
got to
it some
kind
more.
of sit through that presentation and hear all their actuarial stuff. Very, very interesting to go through. But we're not in the urgency. We're not in the position of, I think, immediate urgency that we were in 3 years ago when that issue
We were
was.
looking at a 5 to 6 year window then?
Yeah, 5 to 7. no more.
220 million.
Yeah.
The number, I think, was 11 years. They said it put it out to maybe 11 years already, so that was.
And they didn't project any increases in that, any percentage increases. So when you heard his presentation, you could arguably say there was a few more years you could put onto that. But and we'll see with all the different changes in healthcare, we're going to continue to monitor. One of the things I do want to touch on, the hardship. We changed the hardship clause that the county used to say if you received X amount of dollars in pension, then you received a hardship. Now it goes on household income. There was over 100 hardship cases previous. Today there's 15. So, I mean, that's how much that changed that thing too. So,
If they need it, we definitely want to get it to them.
well, I knew a couple people that were millionaires that were on the hardship clause, to be quite honest. So, I don't know how much of a hardship they were having.
All on a different scale.
Yeah, yeah. So we, those are the little loopholes, or call it whatever you want, in those systems. We got to continue to look at those and tweak those things as go down the road.
Okay, do we have any other Ways and Means Matters? Okay, we'll move on to information only. 9, there's quite a few there, so I'm not going to read them off, but that's for information only.
Make a motion to receive and file the information.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Okay, number 11, executive session.
I move we go into executive session, following executive session adjourned.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
We hope you enjoyed this week's St. Clair County Board of Commissioners meeting. Your St. Clair County Commissioners broadcast these meetings on Comcast Local Access Channel 12 every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. If you have any questions on any part of this program, please feel free to contact your St. Clair County Board of Commissioners or staff. You can find their contact information, the meeting agenda, and videos of the meetings at www.stclaircounty.org.